So, hello everybody. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about FPGAs. We already are familiar with what are FPGAs. FPGAs, they are field programmable gate arrays, the arrays of gate which can be used for prototyping different type of digital circuits. Okay, they are an advantage over the full custom or the semi-custom IC designs because here we do not have any masking. Whatever is the already existing IC we are having, we just have to do the mapping between our circuit and the existing one, and it is ready to be used. So it is especially usable for the circuits which are not to be produced in the high volume, which are to be only prototyped and checked. So let's start with the understanding of this. So we have already seen what are PLDs in the last few lectures. PLDs are the programmable logic devices, and it was a big revolution when it came to the semiconductor industry because reconfigurability or the programmability was one thing which offered us flexibility. Otherwise, circuit once made or once designed could not be changed. But once there was an opportunity for reconfiguration, there was lot of saving of time, effort, and cost. Okay, so PLDs, they were when we talk about PALs or PLAs or PROMs, they were suitable for only small circuits. But as the circuit complexity increased, as we were marching towards the VLSI or the ULSI era, so these were not suffice for that. Even for that, the CPLDs, which were nothing but they were more several blocks of parts coming together, they were not suffice. So there was an improvisation in the industry, which led to two choices. First was MPGA, that is masked programmable logic device, and other was FPGA. Masked programmable logic device was more like your semi-custom design. Okay, so here we could program it during the masking stage. There was customization which was available. But again, the problems, they were very similar to what we've already discussed in the terms of SOs. So the better option which was there was FPGAs, which offered the in-field programmability. Now, what is in-field programmability? In-field programmability means that when the circuit is already embedded for a use in a particular board, it could be programmed then and there. So it could be customized by end user. It was field programmable. It was suitable for implementing both the combination and the non-sequential circuits. So definitely the time to market was much lower. The risk of failures was much lower, and it was able to implement the multi-level function. So field programmable gate arrays. So they, as we understand now, it is a board or a circuit which can be configured to act like any circuit which we want to design. So it can be used for prototyping. So these are the examples of your FPGA ICs. So they come in different forms. That may be in the form of the Express Communication Network, that is PCIe, or it may be used for the storage, or it may be used as a part of the processor on chip memory, or it may be part of the network on chip. So FPGAs can find their application in numerous circuits which are there. Okay, though different vendors are there for FPGA manufacturing. The two dominant players in this field are Xilinx and Altera. Though apart from that, we have Bechtel and Lattice also. But 90% of the market is actually dominated by Xilinx and Altera FPGA boards. And the common ones are the Spartan 3, Spartan 6, though they are the old ones and being used in the academics. And Vertex series, Zinc board is there, Kintex Vertex series. And Altera, they are like Cyclone boards, are the statics boards. So these are the different commercially usable or the available boards which are there. So FPGAs, they are based on the principle of functional completeness, okay, with the set devices. It is just like, I should give you a broad example. that I say that we want to construct a small built area, okay, and at the construction site I have all the things available, okay. So nearby construction site I have all the things available. So I need to make a small, maybe room for my pet in the garden. So we have to do that, and the advantage is we are already having number of bricks is there, cement is there. So basic structure, basic building things, they are going to be there. We only need to pick up and build. So the same thing. So the board is offering us numerous components which are there. I only need to pick up the components which are required for implementation of my circuit and use it. Okay. So functionally complete elements, they are known as the logic blocks. They are the major components which identify any FPGA. They are known as the configurable logic blocks because the logic in those can be configured, or it can be programmed. Okay. Apart from them, that the different CLBs which are there, they are interconnected through a interconnection network. So the channels of wiring or the routing channels, which can again be which can be programmed. Okay. So let's see the architecture. So this is the architecture what we have. So these gray squares, they are referred to as the CLB. So we have number of CLBs there, where each CLB is actually nothing but it is comprising of a lookup table. Generally, the lookup tables are either a 4-input lookup table or a 6-input lookup table in the common Xilinx boards. Then there is a flip-flop which may be used for storing or may be used for the sequential circuit implementation, and we have the latches. Okay. And a multiplexer. So these multiplexers, they may be a bigger multiplexer in size. Okay. So this is what the structure of a CLB is. Further, my lookup table is nothing but lookup table is, you can say the truth table of any function with the output being stored. Okay. So these variables for a 2-input lookup table, these will be serving as the select lines. 4 possible combinations will be the inputs, and this will be the output which is going to be routed for a selected combination, and these are already stored in the memory cells, 1-bit memory cells or the latches. Okay, we'll just see what is the lookup table implementation. Then we have the input output blocks at the periphery of this FPGA. Okay, and in between these are the routing or the wiring channels, and this where these vertical and the horizontal lines they're meeting, there we normally have a switch matrix which can again be programmed. Okay, so this is our FPGA architecture broadly. Okay. So let's see what is the lookup table going to be like. So the lookup table structure is like this. So these 16 possible combinations corresponding to the function what we are going to implement or the truth table output, they're already stored in the bits. Depending upon these inputs, now these are the inputs which will be coming to the CLB. So inside the CLB we have this LUT, and here these inputs are coming as the inputs to the CLB. Okay, and the output is going as the output out from the CLB. So this lookup table is allowing us to implement any Boolean function, any combinational function using the structure. Basically, lookup table is implemented again using multiplexers. FPGAs, when I talk about CLBs, they can be either MUX based or they can be LUT based. Though ideally, present day these FPGAs, they are a mix of both, because as I told you, let's go to the last slide. As I told you, this lookup table is going to be there, and this is a multiplexer normally of the, we do have availability of the large size multiplexers. Okay, so I can say this lookup table or the CLP is just going to act like the basic component. Okay, so any combination function can be implemented using these lookup tables, and apart from these inputs, so what I've just explained, the internal structure of the CLB, Every CLB is having certain inputs and the output pins which can be used to provide the accessibility, whether or programmability or the connection with the these interconnection matrix or with the input output pins. So if it is a mux-based logic, though I have already mentioned, though lookup tables are already or also implemented as mux, we can have purely mux-based FPGAs also, though they are not very popular. Not many commercially available FPGAs are known to at least me, which are purely mux-based. So this is the structure, how it is going to be. So basically it is again the same thing, a multiplexer with a select line. So these select lines, they are going to be the inputs which are coming to the CLB. So apart from these types of blocks, there are different types of these blocks. So they may be DSP blocks because CLBs, when they are implemented as lookup tables, they are suitable only for the combinational logic. But we may require certain high processing functions, floating point additions or something. So these require certain specialized blocks which are available as DSP blocks or the adder multiplier blocks, and which can be used for any design which needs it. So this depends how many blocks are available as DSP blocks, how many are available as lookup table slices, or how many are available as RAM. So all this is going to depend upon the particular structure of a board. Okay, so here we can see that we have block RAM also available. The on-chip SRAM cells are available because if one CLB having one flip-flop is used, it will be too low on memory. So the on-chip RAM is basically provided. And availability of these RAM blocks is also going to affect the granularity of the FPGA. If SRAM based blocks are there and large blocks are there, then it is more going to be more of a coarse design. For a fine grain design, we cannot go for SRAM based blocks because finer that it is, because SRAM is going to, one SRAM cell is going to make use of 6 transistors. So with that large uh, area usage, you cannot afford to have a fine grained FPGA. So that is one thing which divides the industry on what FPGAs are useful, whether the fine grained are better or whether coarse grained are better. Okay, so apart from that, certain hard cores. When I say hard cores, these are the IP cores which need not be, you can say, verified. They are RTL verified, predefined, pre-verified cores which can be directly used as such. So certain hardcore blocks may be used, certain ARM cores may be available, or they may be the PCIe cores, that is the express PCI cores, they may be available, or memory controllers, they may be available in the FPGA. Again, I told you the structure of this CLB, that each CLB, what it is going to be implemented as, whether it is going to be implemented as a lookup table, how many inputs, whether it is a 4-input lookup table, 6-input lookup table, how many slices of such lookup tables are available, whether it is going to have some RAM cells or certain DSP blocks. All this will vary with the type of the FPGA board which is being used. Okay. So next what we come to is the routing. So we have already understood that FPGA is going to offer us a lot of flexibility when it comes to this programmability, because we are going to have the configurable logic blocks which can be configured. Any combination or sequential function can be configured. But apart from that, there is a flexibility which is provided in the interconnections also. So as I told you, where the horizontal and the vertical lines meet, that is going to be a switch block. And this switch block is further, it is having programmable connections. Now, when I say programmable, that programmability is available as in the form of a transistor, whether the transistor can be connected to give the output 1 as a connection, or it can be given the input 0 to give form no connection. Okay. So, and that they may be in any order. Like we can see here, this red bubble, the way I'm pointing it out, that is going to diagonally connect the upper to this vertical line and this horizontal line. If I want to form the connection between this line and this line, so I can form a connection here. But if I don't need this vertical and I want to form the direct horizontal connection, I can just go for this. So there is a lot of flexibility in this. So we see that the programmability of this FPGA, that is not only due to the configurable logic blocks, but also due to the programmability of these switching matrix switches there. Okay. So each wire segment can be connected with the neighboring wiring channels in different ways. So let's have a closer look in the terms of the transistor. So transistor, let's say you can see it is connecting these two lines. So this transistor can be programmed to act as a switch. So if input 1 is there, the switch is going to act as a closed one, otherwise it is going to act as an open one. Further, these switches, they may be buffered one or they may be unbuffered switches. Further, these buffered switches, they can be unidirectional or they can be bidirectional. So that depends. That is why the number of channels are there. What we want to use the buffered input. We want to use them as a bidirectional input outputs. So accordingly, we can pick up that particular wire segment from that wiring channel. Okay, and all this is normally covered in that routing part of FPGA. Now we have understood as of now that we need to program FPGAs. Now what is actually programming FPGAs? When I say programming FPGAs, what makes it feel programmable? What is programming? So let's try to understand it. So first, the programming methods for FPGA, they were different from what was used for the PLDs. Okay, the fuse technology used here is totally different from the fuse technology which was used for the PLS and the PALs at the switch level. So here 3 types of methods are used: SRAM, anti-fuse, and the flash or the E2PROM based. Okay. And the field programmability that is achieved through the switches, that is the transistors, which are further controlled by memory elements or by the fuses. So they control the interconnections, and even through programming, we are able to control the configuration of the logic blocks. So different tools, programming languages and tools, they are used for the programming. So programming के मान पर बात करते हैं, but what is this programming? So when I talk about programming, programming is nothing but when we are configuring these logic blocks and the interconnections forming the routing, and this is done by passing a bit stream from our code. So that is what is offering it the field programmability, because let's say in our lab we are going to make any multiplexer and we want to implement on a Spartan 3 board. So we can simply connect it to our system using the JTAG. We can simulate our program, then we go in for synthesizing. So this synthesis will be actually conversion of the program into the netlist. And netlist, when I say I will have to choose my board which I want to use before I go for my synthesis. So 2 types of netlists they would be generated. One is your simple netlist, that is the RTL netlist, which is nothing but interconnection of components as registers and your combinational logic. And the other will be your technology netlist, which is in the form of EDIF or your NGC. So for Xilinx tools, it is NGC, otherwise it is the EDIF, because it will see whether that combination logic that is not in the terms of gates, but that is in the terms of lookup tables or in the terms of multiplexers. Okay. So that is getting implemented. Then it goes for the implementation stage. Now implementation stage is further broken into 3 parts, that is translate, map, and place and route. Okay. Now translate is actually we combine the netlist and the constraints. Now what are these constraints? What is our clock speed? Clock is going to be connected to which port? Okay, what is the number of inputs, what we are using, whether we are putting them to the IO blocks or only to the dedicated input blocks. So all these things, they are part of the constraints, and the user constraint file has to be written, which is used for um, coding these constraints. So we allocate the net pins and we assign it the particular signal we want to associate it with. Then we have mapping. So mapping is associating our subblocks of our design to the mapping of the FPGA. We are not doing it manually using the tools. So that is being done by the tool. And the last part is place and route. Place and route can be normally, if we are using the simple Xilinx ISC, it is directly done automatically through the tool, but we can manually also use that using the FPGA editor. Be aware about the Xilinx tool, so I'm telling that. So here again, the timing constraints, they are checked as per our blocks to which we have mapped. Whether we need to change it so that my timing constraints are met, whether the setup and hold violations are there or not. So all these, they need to be checked. So once it is there, the next part is what we have been talking on about programming. So once this is all done, it is then converted into a bit stream, and this bit stream is then made to traverse through that JTAG and go to the FPGA board inputs. So wo inputs, then they go to the inputs of the CLBs, and our system, it is going to be seen working on that FPGA board. That is, it is being prototyped. Okay, so basically programming, when I say we make use of HDLs, hardware description languages for that, but that are having the prime job of first converting our code into the simulation form, then we synthesize it into a circuit form, then there is a series of steps, that is implementation, comprising of translate, map, and PNR, so that we are able to associate my design components, that is my theoretical design components, with the actual components available in the FPGA. Once that mapping is done, all my constraints of the design, they are met, including the timing constraints. Then we go in for configuration, which is nothing but the bit stream conversion of these constraint values, okay, and these you can say design values, and they are made to traverse through the JTAG and serve as inputs to my CLBs of the FPGAs to which it has been routed, and they will in turn give me the required output on the required output pins of the FPGA. Okay. So the commonly used HDL languages are Verilog and VHDL. Okay, Chisel is a high-level language which is not normally used here. So it is used for the RISC-V development, which is being there. And again, there is BlueSpec is also there. So these are more specialized languages which are not open to at least academic. Okay, but they are the ones which are being, you can say, whose use was what I should say, advocated by the people who found them for a particular kind of FPGA boards. So this is the basic compilation tool chain which is there. There is a high level code if we are making use of BlueSpec or Chisel or something. Otherwise, we in our labs, we directly start with VHDL or Verilog. Then the circuit is having the functional simulation. Then we have the synthesis part, which takes the RTL code as the input and gives us the netlist. The netlist, there are of two types. First is your RTL netlist, which is .ngr, and the other is your PDIF or the ngc.ngc file, which is there. After this is done, we have the implementation stage, which is again consisting of three steps I told you. translate, map, and paste and route. This takes the constraint file as the input. And after that, we have the cycle level simulation is the post synthesis simulation, which takes into consideration the timing constraints and see if all the setup and hold violations they are not there. And then eventually we have a bit file. This file is then made to traverse through our FPGA board through the JTAG. It means my design is complete. It is now converted into a stream of bits, which is then interpreted or accepted by your CLB on the FPGA board, and it knows what inputs are going to which block. The bit stream is such, okay, it interprets that and gives the necessary inputs, and we can see the output on a FPGA board through maybe LEDs if they are available. Okay, so this is how your complete FPGA implementation of any design takes place. So basically, I can say that by programming, what I've been saying of FPGA is nothing but configuring in the terms of the tool language. So I'm configuring is using the bit stream or the bit file after routing stage with the complete timing analysis, which is used through JTAG and passed on to the FPGA board to be finally given to the input blocks as ones and zeros and giving us the required output. So that was all about an overview of FPGAs and how they can be used. Okay, so that is all. Thank you so much.